Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our raw reaction review for Dangerous Animals. When Zephyr, a savvy and free-spirited surfer, is abducted by a shark-obsessed serial killer and held captive on his boat, she must figure out how to escape before he carries out a ritualistic feeding to the sharks below. This movie, I can say, I've been looking forward to. This is another feature from a director I know we're both big fans of, Sean Byrne, who, for those of you who don't know, if you're stumbling across this for the first time, he is the one who did The Devil's Candy and The Loved Ones. And those are two films I absolutely adore. I know you recently got to check out The Loved Ones, and I know you became a big fan of that as well. Very creative, very cool stuff. I love this guy's style. He's an Australian horror filmmaker, so there's a little bit of bias from us here because we got a thing for those guys. They tend to really kick ass in Australia when it comes to horror. And I mean, Dangerous Animals was one that, just reading the synopsis last year when I put together my list and saw this was coming up. You're talking about a serial killer who uses sharks rather than, blades and, other things. No knived gloves or hockey masks, sharks and shark cages and wenches and all that good stuff. It reminded me of a little film called Shark Night 3D. So even though I love that movie and I have a lot of fun with that movie, that's a bad movie. So I'm just being honest when I say I went into this movie kind of how I go into every shark movie. Luke, how are you going into Dangerous Animals?
Well, going into shark films, I'm always really hesitant just because more often than not, they're pretty big misses with CGI. Just doesn't work. Really takes you out of feeling the intimacy and the real threat of that shark because a lot of the times that CGI shark just does not look authentic. So most of the time, shark films are pretty big misses for me. But we talked about this one. And honestly, I was excited with this kind of genre blend of you have that natural force of the shark, and then you also have that serial killer element. So I was intrigued to see how they were going to balance that. And I think that's really what sold me on it initially. And then I saw the trailer and I got even more excited because it had those Wolf Creek vibes, with hopefully we could have Jai Courtney pull off that kind of Mick Taylor version on the sea, and I thought he had a lot of charisma in the trailer. I thought, unique concept. So I was rather excited about this one going into it, just because I was hoping they weren't going to fall into those familiar traps with the horrible CGI that we see with a lot of shark films, since we're not fully committing to that sort of subgenre. We do have that serial killer element, so I was hoping we were going to get a lot of layers to Jai Courtney and what he was going to bring to the role. So this one, going in, I was rather excited.
Yeah, and I mean, you know me, I'm always looking forward to a shark film. I mean, you guys know that if you've been watching our channel for a couple of years now. I always look forward to a good shark movie, and very, very rarely does that actually produce. Jaws is one of my favorite films of all time. I mean, it's something that's been, it's kind of just like a werewolves, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that no matter what, I'm going to check it out at least, because I'm always trying to scratch that itch. But, diminishing returns over the years have kind of conditioned me to really just understand, even if all the signs are pointing north, the movie is probably just going to be okay at best. Dangerous Animals is actually pretty damn good. And I mean that from both a shark film perspective and just straight up a really awesome, really twisted, unique serial killer story. Because, this movie, it strikes a balance that I have been screaming from the top of my lungs for years that shark movies just don't do. Everybody, like you said, goes right into the really poor CG. They go into making the shark the real enemy, which I understand. The shark is the antagonist in Jaws, but the thing everybody misrepresents, and I feel like movies like The Reef and The Shallows are the only films in recent memory that actually did this pretty good, is that just make the shark an animal. Just make the shark a force. Just make it nature. And it's terrifying. And you know what? Dangerous Animals, they must have been listening, because they absolutely did that here. And I love the balance we have. I love Jai Courtney as this, like you said, Mick Taylor-esque serial killer who's yanking women onto this boat, hauling them overboard, and recording them as he's feeding them to sharks. I mean, it sounds out there. It sounds literally like that scene in Shark Night 3D, but it's so like you see that concept done in such a more grounded, more serious, demented way, and it makes for one of the freshest feeling films of the year for me.
Certainly a fresh feeling film when we go into the shark aspect, just because they tend to double down on that shark being the villain. But this one, injecting that serial killer element, Jai Courtney puts on a hell of a performance here. Just like when you saw in the trailer, and you're hoping that he's going to continue that charisma throughout the actual film itself. He more than holds up his end of the bargain. There are so many great scenes in here, even from the very start, where with a couple and he's just closing that shark cage, and the demented look on his face, where we already know the dynamic going into this film, what Jai Courtney's all about. But if you didn't, and you just went into this really cold, just picked up a ticket at the theater and wanted to go sit down, you know something's off as soon as you see that look Jai Courtney gives. And what a hell of an opening here. I'm excited for a lot of people to sit down in the theater to check this one out and really just live in that opening scene. Now, I know we had talked about it, and I think maybe it is spoiled a little bit, but
Yeah, if you can avoid the trailer, like if you're watching this review cold, like I know some of you are known to do, just don't. It's so close to coming out. Just trust us. You don't want to see the trailer because it gives away pretty much the whole opening.
yeah, and at least for me, I didn't remember that scene, or I only half paid attention because it caught me off guard, and I thought, what a great way to set the tone for this film and really get into what Jai Courtney's about. Now, when we're in with him and he's dancing on the boat and we're getting into the elements, he really has this rhythm down of a serial killer. I absolutely love what they bring there. Now, it's nothing overly unique, but the way Jai Courtney sells it and just kind of the cohesiveness that we feel for him as a serial killer, I love it. With the videotaping, that is another element that I absolutely love here. When we're going into these shark attacks, we kind of go back in between the actual filming, the actual film portion of it, and then we're also seeing it through the lens of a VHS video camera. And I thought, okay, what a great way to kind of conceal what we're getting with the sharks, because we're not doing an overly amount of exposing the sharks. It's that element of under the water, but it really does keep up a freshness as well as more of a demented take. I think it really gives its own unique creative stamp.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I love about this so much is like they decided, if we're going to really get people to take shark movies seriously, if we're going to get people to kind of get invested in something that's not going to pull them out, even when admittedly there are a handful of CGI kind of shark scenes, you really can't get around that these days. Even the original Jaws, as much of a flawless film as I, tout that as, there still are moments, yes, where the shark does look a little puppety, but that's okay. That's part of the charm of that film. And I think that this film builds so much goodwill with the character of Jai Courtney, with the threat that he presents, with kind of how we stagger our events throughout this film, that like by the time you get there, it's just so rewarding. You can really forgive it easily. At least I can. And I am the worst person to ask about that because, of course, I will defend something when it comes to sharks if it's even remotely enjoyable. And this being actually really great is something that I'm willing to go to bat for this movie when it comes to the very limited and I would say not the worst CGI that I've seen when it comes to sharks, but it is noticeable in a few spots.
Yeah, and maybe for me, I'm a little less forgiving in those aspects just because I think the realism that they bring to, if you want to call it a shark film, we talked to Sean Byrne, and he mentioned a couple times in that interview, it's not just solely a shark film, and it doesn't solely feel like a shark film because we are dealing with those serial killer elements. Now, I think when you look at the CGI that they did use, was it absolutely necessary? I don't think so, just because we're so lost in the realism and such a real take on a shark film, a serial killer film, this perfect genre mashup, I think. that I don't think we necessarily need it, but I think maybe it was there just to kind of give a wink and a nod to shark fans to say, oh, yeah, we're going to please that audience as well. Just when I was fully invested in me not being a big fan of shark films just because that CGI, and we're kind of running and gunning with this film. I'm like, okay, I love the take. And then there's a couple things that, pop up and I'm like, I could have done without that personally, not being a huge shark fan film with the CGI. I think, you could have just skated by that stuff. We didn't necessarily need it just because the elements that they bring, the tension that they do bring, is strong enough on its own to really get you lost in something that could actually potentially really happen if you wanted to look at a serial killer and their method to their madness. So, for me, it stuck out a little bit, but it didn't really kill the film just because by the time we get to those elements, the film's already strong enough on its own. And Jai Courtney's really put on a great performance. And, those aspects of it, I think, are rather strong. Now, when we look at performance-wise, the cast is fine, but Jai Courtney's really the shining light here. He's he's leaps and bounds above everyone else in here just because, I think he's a great actor. From what I've seen from him, I did like him in Suicide Squad. I thought he had a lot of great charisma there. So as soon as we said we're going to, tack him on to the serial killer genre here, I was excited to see what he was going to do. And he absolutely brings that charisma. But, I think he gets a lot of texture in his character, whereas what we get this love story subplot that for me is nothing remarkable. It's really follows the same beats, and those were the scenes in the film where I was like, I wish there was more of an interesting take. When you look at Devil's Candy, when you look at The Loved Ones, and those are Sean Byrne written properties, that I think, if he would have had a pass at the script at least, or maybe threw in some ideas of his own here, since this is not written by Sean Byrne, that I think maybe that subplot, maybe we wouldn't have gotten a love story. Maybe we would have got something completely unique to what we see in those types of films, because that was really the only underwhelming aspect for me.
Yeah, and so getting into that, the cast for me too, I mean, I'm gonna gush about Jai Courtney here because I am somebody who, I'm not gonna sit here and even say, because I feel like a lot of people are suddenly gonna be like, oh, Jai Courtney, I've always loved him. It's like, yeah, I've never had an issue with him as a person or an actor, really. It's just the projects he picks, like, for the most part, I don't know what's going on there. It's like, I mean, I guess, you can get tied to a couple of things, a couple of big franchises. He has a very small role in the film Jack Reacher, not Reacher, but Jack Reacher from 2012, I think. That was really solid. And that's really where I think he first popped up on the scene, at least in my perspective. But you quickly follow that up with A Good Day to Die Hard, which not great, not good, not his fault, but it's just one of those things where he really found himself getting attached to these movies. Like you mentioned, the first Suicide Squad. And yes, although he's a shining light with a lot of charisma there, he's such a small piece to an overall pretty kind of movie. And then you have things like I, Frankenstein, and then the Divergent movies, which, hey, they have their fans. And of course, the other big real, I think, rough spot is definitely going to be Terminator Genesis there, playing John Connor. And I remember even seeing that film. I didn't think he was terrible, but it's just the movies themselves. They're not good scripts. And I don't know why he kept getting attached to these, but I hope that this is a turn for him. I also see that he's attached to a show that I've been wanting to watch called American Primeval on Netflix. It's a Western. I hear that's really good. I hope that he's, a big part of that. But I really want this to be the mark of Jai Courtney's kind of resurgence, his coming out party of just saying, all right, now I'm going to work with projects I want to work with. I tried the big studio stuff. Maybe I'll get back there eventually, but now it's my turn to do interesting roles, because damn it, that is what this character is. This character is very methodical and interesting. Again, like Luke said earlier, not the most original stuff, the stuff that we see him doing as far as plotting and doing stuff. It's very, by number serial killer stuff, but it's done so well. And the performance, the charisma that he brings, it's so unbelievably strong. I mean, I think that this will be a career defining role for him going forward. I think a lot of people are going to say positive things about him in this, because he just really showed where he can go and how he can really take his performance and be both charming and absolutely disgusting all in one scene.
And that is probably my only critique. I know you mentioned charming, where we get the dynamic of him being the serial killer, and we do have aspects of him kind of lure people in, but I really wanted to see him almost outside of that dynamic and how he functions in everyday life. You look at something like American Psycho, Patrick Bateman trying to live his life, and we have that inner monologue of him not feeling authentic to himself. And I would have loved to have seen that, because we do see Jai Courtney step off the boat, but it is at a more of a time of distress, I guess you would say.
Hmm.
So you only kind of get one side of his personality, whereas would have loved to have seen him kind of mingle with the people overall. We
The
do get
populace.
yes, one we do get one character he interacts with, but it's like you look at a film like I Know What You Did Last Summer, and yeah, not overall the greatest film in the world, but I love the way they kind of opened up the Sea Town and that kind of whodunit thriller. I would have loved to have seen them open up this Sea Town and see how he mingles with those characters. Just because there's so much charisma here, I could have watched Jai Courtney for another 20 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember that conversation we had about a week ago when we finished this. It was just like, man, we wish we could have had more of that, because I'm in total agreement. Even though I love what we got, and I know you enjoyed what we got as well, but it's just like, you want more. You want to live with this guy a little bit longer, because he's just so interesting, and because it's like, if we would have gotten more of that kind of day-to-day interaction with people, there could have been a little bit more time, I think, to show a little bit more of that personality and what sets his serial killer apart from a Dexter or somebody else. You know what I mean? I would have almost loved to see like a limited series with this character doing this, which brings me to actually something I have to fit it in somewhere. It makes no sense for the review, but bear with me, guys. You brought up Wolf Creek at the beginning of this. I don't know, man. As you say that, I'm like thinking about this performance, and I'm like, Jai Courtney, Wolf Creek prequel trilogy. I don't know, man. I could see him playing Mick Taylor. I could see him bringing a little bit to that, and I'm a very big defender of all things Wolf Creek. I love the series. I love both the movies. I'm looking forward to the new one. But I mean, if you want somebody who's gonna live up to John Jarrett, I mean, Jai Courtney does a really good job here, guys. He really does embody that kind of rough, charming Australian outback kind of feel that you're looking for from a character like this. And I mean, overall, I agree with you. I think that this movie is not flawless. I think that it does have some scenes, like especially like you said with that romance angle, that it's a bit paint by numbers. It's a bit of a stretch here and there. But at the end of the day, we are talking about a dude who's dangling women over the edge of a boat to feed to sharks. So it's a little bit out there of a concept. But as a summer horror film, the movie has more teeth than I think anybody's expecting. And that's really where I think I walk away from this movie confidently saying that this is a strong recommend for me. I mean, I'm an easy sell. Again, it's not a shark film purity like kind of thing, but for what it is and what it accomplishes, this is a movie I'm looking forward to owning, and this is certainly going to be in my rotation of summer horror films from this point on. I think that Sean Byrne absolutely showed up. I agree with you. I'd love to see him take this material and write it himself. This was a spec script that was kind of being shopped around. I guess it had a lot of bids on it, but it is one of those things where I'm really happy that we got Sean Byrne of all people to tackle it, because I think that he really brought the best out of the story.
Yeah, in looking at it, I know a lot of people, there's probably gonna be eyes on this project because of Sean Byrne. Where you look at something like The Loved Ones, which is so iconic in the horror space, and even Devil's Candy's up there as well, where
so good.
we talk about it. So I think a lot of people are going to be attracted to this property because of Sean Byrne. So when we look at that grittiness, that kind of what we get from The Loved Ones, especially, that's like turned up to 100 in terms of what we get with how gritty, how gross that film can be. I think this one may not even live up to the Devil's Candy for me in terms of how grittiness. We do get to a point in here where it does get pretty gritty. And I marked in my notes, it's about 71 minutes in, to be honest, where there's a great visual, where you have this dingy kind of dungeon looking thing. We have a character that's bleeding, great visual. My only critique was that I wanted that earlier.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of go along with that ride, something that feels like a gauntlet of a film, like a Wolf Creek, where it's like, oh my gosh, I can tap out at any moment. I need to take a break and come back to this, especially when you're dealing with the shark film and a serial killer. I was hoping for maybe a little bit more gore, maybe a little bit more blood. It is fulfilling to a certain extent,
Oh
but you
yeah.
know, you see Sean Byrne, you're probably going to be thinking something else. So I just want to kind of mention that for expectation wise to go into this. It does have a balance to it where me not being the biggest shark fan, I did find this kind of the more so mild use as to what you'd see with a pure shark film.
Absolutely.
It's fulfilling, not being a big shark fan where it's that mild use. They're using it strategically. They're not using it. It's not gratuitous. It's not just, hey, let's throw a shark on film right now just because this is a shark film. And they have that great balance between the serial killer aspect as well. So you're kind of getting this happy balance between those two different subgenres. So, for me, I found that fulfilling. I could see maybe shark fans being like, I wanted a more of a shark film, but you're not
Mhm.
getting that here. It's a balance. So go into this expecting that. Not as gritty as other Sean Byrne films. That love subplot gets a little annoying to and to a certain
Yeah.
extent. I think, there's a point where we're super gritty into this actual looming death, and one of our characters goes, "You felt it, didn't you?" And it's like, come on, we're done here. We're on to something else. So, for me, this is a recommend as well. I think maybe not necessarily a strong recommend. It's probably the happy medium for me. But I think it's a perfect balance. I think if you're not a shark film fan, I think you'll go into this, have some fun with it, especially being that serial killer aspect. You get also a wide range of different things going on here. And that Jai Courtney performance, a perfect start to the summer. It's going to be in conversations as we talk about performance-wise at the end of the year. I guarantee it. You're not going to be able to escape it. Jai Courtney put on a great performance.
Absolutely. I mean, this is definitely end of the year top 10 material for me. It will be included because, again, as somebody who loves shark movies, who loves Jaws, who loves all this stuff, it's like it is nice to actually have a movie I can point to and say, hey, I can put this in there with like the reef and like the shallows and stuff and say, this is very competent. This is very well done. And I know there's always going to be kind of a, goofiness to the just the concept of a killer shark movie because I mean, at the end of the day, they're animals. And the biggest compliment I can give this movie and why I think that shark fans will appreciate it is these sharks are never treated as monsters. They're never treated as, just being these devils that are just chasing people around Amity Island. This is purely just an animal and it's interacting with what it knows. It wants food, it wants to get a meal, and clearly this guy chumming the water, the sharks in the area have learned, hey, when we see this boat, that means there's food. So it's like, hey, there you go. And that's the best way. And that's the way, again, I've been screaming for years. If we're gonna ever get a shark movie that even compares to like the likes of Jaws, which I'm not saying Dangerous Animals gets there fully, but it's the best thing we've gotten in a long time, that like you need to reach it from that angle. The shark is not a villain. The shark is an animal. And unfortunately, sometimes animals, when they interact with humans, we get really poor results and we need to handle it. And that's why Jaws works. And that's why, this movie for me works in spades.
And sure, looking at Jaws, that's the gem. That's the one.
Absolutely.
No one's ever going to live up to it. It's the best shark film out there. It is. That's just what it is right now. So you can't live up to Jaws. The best you can hope for is Jaws 2 in that subgenre, I think. But you look at it and you have to pivot. You have to bring something new. And Dangerous Animals is something new to the shark subgenre, where it's the sharks are being exploited. Essentially, it's not,
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
not the villain. The human being is the villain. This is a facilitation of a method for a serial killer rather than the shark being the actual villain of the film. And I love that aspect of it because it adds texture to the serial killer and what they're about as well. And it kind of gives you that very creative stamp, and that's what Dangerous Animals is. Perfect start. Dylan said a great summer film. This one I want to own so I can put it on. This is gonna be 4th of July rotation. Easily throw this on. You'll have a lot of fun.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, this is definitely a big one. Definitely go check this thing out. It's going to be in theaters this Friday. Limited theatrical release. I think this will be hitting Shudder later on this year, considering it is a IFC Shudder picture. Just really happy to say that this actually worked really well for me. I think it's going to work for a lot of people. And overall, I got to say, as somebody who, we've already said it twice, I want to own this. I could easily see a very nice like Sean Byrne box set with these first three films. Even though he didn't write this one, it still has enough of that touch that like I would even agree with you. As much as I love this movie, I'd probably put The Loved Ones and Devil's Candy just ahead of it. And it's just, again, I think if he just would have had a pass at this script, we would have gotten just that extra little bit of flavor that would have gotten it there. But nonetheless, it works. It's firing on all cylinders for us. So definitely check out Dangerous Animals and stay tuned for just another couple minutes here because we're going to be including a couple of clips. Luke and I got to sit down with the man himself, yes, Sean Byrne, and discuss Dangerous Animals as well as a little bit of his other career here. So definitely let us know what you think of that. Let us know what you thought of the film if you've gotten a chance to see it. Keep the spoilers vague if you can. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up here, guys. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared. This movie, in a lot of ways, I think the genius of it is you took the approach of we're going to set a story involving sharks. They're still sort of the bad guys, I guess. But we're also going to have this serial killer element. Now, looking at this, you didn't write this film. So how did you come across this one, and what was it like reading it off the page for the first time?
Well, I was fortunate enough that it was sent to me by my good friend Brian Kavanagh Jones, who had been looking for something to do together for a long time, and it's by kind of this new writer on the scene, Nick Leppard, who's also doing Oz Perkins' next film, Keeper. He wrote that as well. So it's really exciting when you read a fresh voice, but immediately I was struck by the fusion of two very popular subgenres of horror, the shark film and the serial killer film, and I just thought that's just combining those is such a great idea, and why hasn't anyone done this? And then the fact that the shark wasn't kind of like overtly the monster, man is the monster, and even when there's shark carnage, it's because they're manipulated by man. And I mean I agree, like Jaws is just untouchable. It's like that's why I just kept going back and watching Jaws rather than the other kind of shark films, as much as I've enjoyed some of the others, but it's just so masterful that you can't even begin to try and compete with that, because it's like it's also because every other film tries to compete with it and has sharks as kind of these these indiscriminate kind of killers. So what was so exciting about it was this went the other direction, and it actually has respect for the shark. And I thought this is carving out kind of new territory for a shark film, which I just couldn't turn down that opportunity, because I'd been waiting to see a different shark film, it felt like, for my whole life almost.
The horror shit, gonna do it live, cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.